Hi, students. So we're going to do this game together, and it's from Prep Test 92. It's the second section of games, which is section 4, and it's the second game. It's about campers and the supplies that they buy, and this is a grouping game. The base is going to be the actual campers, and then the roster is going to be the items that they could buy. So our base, 2, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 campers. And they can buy any of 3 things. Now, our rules tell us, I think it's in the passage, that no camper is going to buy 2 of the same thing. So we wouldn't see like 2 R's over here. Like, no, you can buy 1 of each thing. And we're also told that each camper buys at least 1 item. This means that no group is going to be empty. So every single one of these groups is going to have between 1 and 3 of this roster, basically. So now that I have that established, I have to look at the rules. And I'm going to tell y'all in advance that this is a game where the battle is really won in the passage and the rules and the inferences that are made from it. Like before you get to the questions, a lot of the game should already be conquered. Okay, let's look at our rules. We know that J gets an R. We also know that exactly 2 other people do. So I don't really have like a good shorthand for this. I just know I don't have like a good symbolization. Yeah, for this, I just know I'm going to assign R 2 more times at this point. So I'll just put that over there 2 more times, and then that's it. The next rule, we'll assign S and T over here to K. And then the next rule kind of interacts with this rule about what K gets, because it's saying that H can't buy anything that K buys. So if K buys it, right? Yeah, that's right. If K buys it, H doesn't. So this means H cannot get these things. And I also know that H needs to buy at least 1 item because that's in the passage. So therefore, we can infer that H will get R, H will purchase an R and nothing else. H cannot purchase anything else because K already purchased the other 2 things. I also know that now at this point, K's group, so to speak, is closed off. Like K can't buy anything else. So I'm going to box off. That's like, for me, that tells me that I can't assign anything else to that group when I put like a top on it. Because if K bought anything else, then we would have H buying something that K bought. So we now have our H group totally determined. We have our K group completely determined. Another thing is that I've assigned another R. So we now just have 1 R left to assign, and then we can't assign any more R's. What is our next rule? J needs to purchase something, at least 1 thing that is not something that H purchases. So what does this mean in like real world talk? This means, what does H not purchase? S and T. So J needs to purchase at least 1 of those. Now, according to just this rule, I really don't know why J couldn't purchase both S and T, but I know that J needs to purchase either S or T. Okay, next rule. Ooh, okay, this says that M is going to purchase more items than J. This guy gets more than that guy. Well, we can interpret this. We can make an inference from this because we know that J has minimum of 2 items. M needs to have more than that. So M needs to have all 3 items. R, S, and T. We've now assigned our last R. Also, J is now limited. I'm going to put a box over it because before I had said, well, J could have R and S and T as long as it gets just at least 1 of those. But now, now that I've seen this last rule where M has to have more variables in that group than J does, J is now limited to just 2 variables. It can't have 3. So I'm going to box that off. So now what? Now what? Now what? Before we play the game, I can see I have determined 4 of my groups, or I should say I've determined 3 of my groups. I see what H gets, I see what K gets, I see what M gets. J is almost totally determined. It only has 2 options. J could have either R and S or R and T, either way. I also know that the only things left for me to distribute would be S's and T's, because I assigned all of the R's that I could possibly assign. I can like take this off my roster and say we only have S and T left to assign. So between G and L, this is an L over here. From what I could see, they each need to get at least 1 item. They could either have S or T or both, but neither one could have R. And if you felt like you might have a hard time remembering that, write it in like that for yourself for later on. At this point, our board is very much determined and our questions shouldn't be too difficult. The first one is about determining basically how many of these groups are completely determined. Well, G isn't completely determined, you know, because there H is, J isn't, K is, L isn't, M is. So this is the correct answer. Let me turn the page. So number 8 gives us a local condition. And trying to figure out if I should, you shouldn't write on your master diagram, but sometimes I like to. This is quicker, but you shouldn't, but I'm not going to. But sometimes I do. So L is going to get an S and nothing else. Just S. Let me recopy some of what I'm looking. Transcribe everything from the master diagram. So there is no other group that can have S all by its lonesome. What this means is that G group, the first group, whatever his name is, Grover, can either have S and T, or you could just have T, either one. So you have just T, or you could have S and T, either one of these. I'm not going to recopy this whole thing, but this is basically like the 2 options that are possibilities, or not even the 2 options, it's kind of the 4 options, because that's 2 options right there. These are the options that we could use to answer number 8. So if this is true, what is the like kind of the amounts of S's and T's that could be in here? So the correct answer to this one is C. We could have 4S and 3T. And here's how. Imagine if this one, right? Imagine if we used our top option where G only buys a T and nothing else. And imagine if J bought an S. So we would have 1, 2, 3, 4 S's. And then we would also have 4 T's. Isn't that right? It's not right then. We did 4 S's and 3 T's. No, that's 4 S's and 3 T's. I'm not editing this. I won't do it, I swear. Imagine if using our top option where G buys just the T, and let's imagine that J buys R and S. So I'm just going to cross off the T so I don't get confused. In this case, this would give us 1, 2, 3, 4 S's and 1, 2, 3 T's. Yes, the correct answer is C. I've never been a big fan of this question. I've done this many times with students, so I think I'd be quicker at it, but no. Wow, okay, so 9 is interesting. I feel like 9 is like a whole bunch of double negatives. It's basically saying which of the following pairs, because all of the answer choices are pairs, could be, which of the following pairs Which of the following pairs have to purchase at least one of the same item as each other? Because all of the incorrect answers are going to be pairs of campers that could have no overlap. They could purchase none of the same items. So for instance, it is possible, looking at A, it is possible for R and L, not R and L. Oh my goodness, looking at answer choice A, it is possible for H and L to have no items in common because H only has R. In fact, they're going to have no items in common. L is going to have either S or T or both of those, but they're not going to have an overlap. So A wouldn't be correct. So the correct answer is C. This is a pair that there's going to need to have to be some kind of overlap in what their group is, what is distributed to them. K has both S and T distributed to it. I also know that G can't have R, and each has something, so it's either going to have just S, in which case they're going to have S in common, or it'll have just T, in which case they'll have T in common, or it could get both S and T, in which case they'll have both of those in common. So there's no way that they can't have a commonality. So that is the correct answer. The answer choice is C. Let's see number 10. Okay, this gives us a local condition, a local rule. We need to make sure that in order to fulfill this local rule, G and L have nothing in common. I'm going to write on my master diagram. G should never get. In order for G and L to have nothing in common, they basically, one of them will get S, the other one will get T, and it really doesn't matter which one. But they're both going to get exactly one of those two and not the other. So if that was true, then it asks us what could be false. What could be false? A lot of my students don't like this degree of certainty. Could be false is another way to say not necessarily true. Those are the same thing. Those are different wordings of the same question. If you would like an easier way to remember it, could be false and not necessarily true are another way of saying must be true except. So on a could be false or a not necessarily true, the four incorrect answers will be things that must be true. So that's sometimes an easier way to solve it, is to look for what must be true. And in this case, B, C, D, and E are all things that must be true. If you look at this top diagram, yeah, B has to be true. There needs to be at least one, there needs to be exactly one thing in common between G and K. C has to be true. C has to be true. There's maximum 4 stoves. Remember, these can't both be the same thing. One is S and the other one is T. So there's not just there's maximum 4 stoves. Because either G or L will have a stove, K will have a stove, M will have a stove, and then J might have a stove. So that's maximum 4. D says, what about maximum 4 tents? Same thing, yeah. Either G or L will have a tent, so that's 1. K has a tent, M has a tent, and then J could have a tent, so that's maximum 4. And then there's E. This is something that has to be true. There are exactly 3 of these groups that are only going to have one item in them. G is only going to have one thing. L will have the other thing. Basically, G and L are each going to have 1, and then also H is going to have exactly 1. So exactly 3 of these groups only have one variable in them. So that is something that has to be true. B, C, D, and E are all things that must be true. So A is something that could be false. Another way to think of could be false is that it includes things that are sometimes true, things that could be true, as well as things that are actually false. In this case, it's just something that could be true. It doesn't have to be false. Like J could or could not purchase something that L purchases. So could be true, also could be false. So A is the correct answer. Let's look at the last one. Let me take all of the writing off of, let me take everything off of my master diagram that I put in just for number 10. This is why you don't write on your master diagram. Don't do it, people. Okay, number 11. You're asking for a pair of, in this grouping, that needs to purchase the same number. That needs to have the same number of variables in that group. So two groups that need to have the same number of variables in them, not the same variables, but the same number of variables. So right away, just looking at my master diagram, I can see that J and K need to each have exactly two variables in them, and that is the correct answer. The correct answer is D. Yay! It's not an easy game, and everything is in the setup. I really hope that this video has been helpful to everybody who watches it. If you need any LSAT guidance, all my contact stuff is below. You can also leave a comment. I check my YouTube daily. And I will see y'all in the next video. Bye. I don't know how to end this. I'm ending it now.